September 19, 1846, two children, Maximin Giraud, age 11, and Melanie Calvat, age 14, were tending sheep for their employers near La Salette in the French Alps. The effects of the French Revolution, which had terrorized the church, the blood spilt during the reign of Napoleon, the increasing secularization of social thought, and the rising political turmoil enveloping Europe had taken a serious toll on the faith of the people. In the parish of La Salette, fewer and fewer people attended the Mass and the sacraments were neglected. Cursing had overtaken praying, licentiousness, purity, and greed and self-indulgence, piety and sacrifice. Melanie came from a poor family and began working at age 7. She had no schooling, knew only bits of catechism, infrequently attended Mass, and could hardly recite Our Father or the Hail Mary. Similarly, Maximin, whose mother had died and who did not like his stepmother, had little religious education and no schooling. While they were tending their sheep, they saw a brilliant light, brighter than the sun. As they approached, they noticed a beautiful lady, seated on a rock and crying with her face in her hands. In tears, she stood and spoke to them in their local French dialect. She wore a headdress topped by a lucent crown with a band of roses, a dress with beams of light, and slippers edged with roses. Around her neck hung a golden crucifix. On one end of the crossbeam was a hammer and nails, and on the other, a pincher. Over her shoulders was a heavy chain.
Come to me, my children. Do not be afraid. I am here to tell something of the greatest importance. If my people will not obey, I shall be compelled to let go of my son's arm. It is so heavy, so pressing, that I can no longer restrain it. How long I have suffered for you, I am obliged to entreat him without ceasing. But you take not the least notice of that. No matter how well you pray in the future, no matter how well you act, you will never be able to make up to me what I have endured for your sake. I have appointed you 6 days for working. The 7th I have reserved for myself, and no one will give it to me. This causes the weight of my son's arm to be crushing. The cart drivers cannot swear without bringing in my son's name. These are the 2 things which make my son's arm so burdensome. If the harvest is spoiled, it is your own fault. I warned you last year by means of the potatoes. You paid no heed, quite the reverse. When you discovered that the potatoes had rotted, you swore, you abused my son's name. They will continue to rot, and by Christmas this year, there will be none left. If you have grain, it will do no good to sow it, for what you sow the beast will devour, and any part of it that springs up will crumble into dust when you thresh it. A great famine is coming. The children under 7 years of age will be seized with trembling and die in their parents' arms. The grown-ups will pay for their sins by hunger. The grapes will rot, and the walnuts will turn bad. If people are converted, the rocks will become piles of wheat. It will be found that the potatoes have sown themselves. Do you say your prayers well, my children? It is very important to say them at night and in the morning. When you don't have time, at least say an Our Father and a Hail Mary. And when you can, say more. Only a few rather old women go to Mass in the summer. All the rest work every Sunday throughout the summer. And in winter, when they don't know what to do with themselves, they go to Mass only to poke fun at religion. During Lent, they flock to the butcher's shop like dogs. My children, you'll make this known to all my people.
The children repeated the story to each of their employers. When the people ascertained that the stories matched and several pious people concluded this had been an apparition of the Blessed Mother, the children were sent to the parish priest of La Salette. The priest recounted the children's story at Mass. The government officials began an investigation, and the children maintained their story despite threats of imprisonment. Once, when investigating the site, someone broke off a piece of the rock on which Our Lady has sat. A spring of water emerged in a place that was dry except for when the snows are melting. The spring flowed steadily and abundantly. Some of the water was given to a woman suffering from a long-term serious illness. She drank a little of the water each day as she prayed a novena, and on the 9th day, she was cured. The case was then submitted to Bishop Brouillard, who initiated a thorough investigation of the apparition. Meanwhile, more miraculous cures occurred. The greatest miracle was truly spiritual. People started to attend Mass faithfully and confess regularly. They stopped working on Sundays, and they returned to living a pious and devotional life. Pilgrimages to the site became increasingly popular. 5 years later, on September 19, 1851, Bishop Brouillard determined that the apparition bore in itself all the marks of truth and that the faithful are justified in believing it to be certain and indubitable. A real conversion of the people had taken place.